One of the first things a narcissistic wife will often do after divorce is attempt to control the narrative. This is not random behavior. It is deeply connected to the narcissistic need to protect the false image she has spent years constructing. A narcissist does not merely fear losing a relationship. She fears losing control over how she is perceived by others. And once the marriage ends, perception becomes her battlefield. You may suddenly notice strange shifts in how people treat you. Friends become distant. Family members act cold without explanation. Mutual acquaintances begin looking at you with suspicion, even though they never asked for your side of the story. This happens because the narcissistic mind understands something very well. Whoever controls the story often controls public sympathy, and sympathy is a form of power. Carl Jung once suggested that people will do almost anything to avoid confronting their own shadow. A narcissistic person is no exception. Rather than facing guilt, insecurity, or emotional emptiness, she projects those qualities onto you. She accuses you of the very behaviors she secretly carries within herself. If she was manipulative, suddenly you become controlling. If she was emotionally cruel, now you are labeled abusive. This projection allows her to escape self-awareness while preserving her carefully designed identity. What makes this especially dangerous is that many good-hearted people waste enormous energy trying to defend themselves against every accusation. But the narcissist thrives on emotional reactions. The more desperate you become to prove your innocence, the more emotionally entangled you remain in her game. The wiser path is different. Remain calm. Stay grounded in facts. Let your actions speak louder than emotional arguments. Over time, truth has a strange way of revealing itself without force. People eventually notice inconsistencies. Masks eventually crack, but only if you refuse to lose yourself in the chaos. And this is the deeper lesson. Your reputation is not built by rumors, but by the character you consistently embody when pressure attempts to break you. What confuses many men after divorcing a narcissistic wife is that the relationship often does not truly feel over. Even after the legal separation, the emotional manipulation can continue in subtle and deeply psychological ways. This is because a narcissist rarely seeks love in the mature sense of the word. What she seeks is emotional control, attention, and psychological access to your mind. And once she realizes you are beginning to detach emotionally, she may suddenly attempt to pull you back in. This can appear in many forms. One day she becomes cold and distant, and the next she sends emotional messages filled with nostalgia, regret, or unexpected kindness. She may remind you of old memories, hint at reconciliation, or create moments designed to awaken your guilt and empathy. To an emotionally healthy person, these mixed signals feel confusing because they are contradictory. But to the narcissistic mind, contradiction is often a strategy, not a mistake. Carl Jung understood that human beings are vulnerable to illusions when they are disconnected from self-awareness. And one of the greatest illusions after a toxic relationship is the belief that the narcissist has finally changed. In reality, what often returns is not love, but the fear of losing influence over you. Your emotional reaction becomes proof that she still occupies space in your inner world. This is why many people remain psychologically trapped long after the relationship ends. The body may leave the marriage, but the mind continues replaying emotional cycles of hope, confusion, anger, and guilt. The narcissist depends on this cycle because it keeps your attention fixed on her instead of on your own healing. The important thing is to recognize manipulation without becoming consumed by hatred. Emotional maturity is not about revenge. It is about clarity. When you stop responding impulsively, when you stop chasing closure from someone incapable of giving it, you begin reclaiming your inner stability. And perhaps this is the hardest truth of all. Freedom begins the moment you no longer need validation from the person who wounded you. One of the most painful experiences after divorcing a narcissistic wife is realizing that the conflict does not always remain between two people. Very often, it expands outward into your social world. Friends, relatives, even your own children can slowly become drawn into an invisible psychological war. And this is where many men begin to feel not only rejected, but isolated. A narcissistic person understands the power of perception and emotional influence. She may not attack you directly at first. Instead, she uses suggestion, implication, and emotional storytelling to shape how others see you. Small comments are planted over time. Doubt is introduced quietly. She presents herself as the wounded one, the misunderstood one, the victim who simply endured so much. And because narcissists are often highly skilled at performing emotion, many people believe the performance before they investigate the truth. Carl Jung warned that people are often unconsciously manipulated by appearances because they fail to examine the deeper motives operating beneath behavior. Most individuals do not like conflict, so they naturally sympathize with the person who appears emotionally distressed. The narcissist understands this instinctively. She knows that controlling emotions around her can become a way of controlling reality itself. What makes this especially tragic is when children become part of the manipulation. A narcissistic ex-wife may subtly influence them against you through guilt, emotional dependency, or selective storytelling. Rarely is it obvious. The manipulation is often hidden beneath statements that sound caring on the surface. But over time, the child begins absorbing fear, resentment, or confusion about the other parent. This creates enormous emotional pressure on the man who simply wants peace. Many respond with anger, desperation, or endless attempts to defend themselves. But constant emotional reactions usually deepen the cycle rather than end it. Children, especially, are more influenced by emotional stability than emotional arguments. Your task is not to win every battle of perception. Your task is to remain grounded in truth, consistency, and self-control even when misunderstood. Because in the end, integrity has a quiet power that manipulation can imitate for a season, but never sustain for a lifetime. After the divorce, many men believe the struggle is finally over. They think distance will automatically bring peace. But one of the defining traits of a narcissistic personality is the refusal to accept the loss of control quietly. This is why a narcissistic ex-wife will often continue testing your boundaries long after the relationship has legally ended. At first, the behavior may seem small or insignificant. Unexpected messages arrive late at night. Sudden emotional outbursts appear without warning. Minor disagreements become dramatic conflicts. She may provoke jealousy, create unnecessary legal tension, or deliberately involve herself in moments where she knows your emotional defenses are weakest. None of this is accidental. These actions are often designed to measure one thing: whether she still has psychological access to your emotions. Carl Jung understood that human beings reveal themselves most clearly through the patterns they repeat unconsciously. A narcissist repeats emotional chaos because chaos creates opportunities for control. If she can still provoke anger, guilt, frustration, or emotional confusion within you, then in her mind, the connection still exists. Your reaction becomes proof that she still influences your inner state. This is why emotional discipline becomes essential after separation. Many people misunderstand boundaries. They think boundaries are about controlling another person's behavior. They are not. Boundaries are about controlling your own response. You cannot stop someone from provoking you, manipulating you, or attempting to disturb your peace. But you can decide whether you will emotionally participate in the cycle, and this requires something deeper than simple willpower. It requires self-awareness. You must learn to observe your emotions without immediately surrendering to them. The narcissist wants impulsive reactions because impulsive people are easier to control. The calmer and more centered you become, the weaker her influence grows. Over time, this emotional stability frustrates the narcissistic mind because it removes the reward she once received from your reactions. The game loses its power when you stop playing your assigned role within it. And perhaps that is the true meaning of freedoms. Not escaping a toxic person physically, but reaching the point where they can no longer disturb your inner balance.
One of the most shocking things many men experience after divorcing a narcissistic wife is how quickly she appears to move on. Sometimes it happens within weeks, sometimes even sooner, to the person who genuinely invested emotionally in the relationship. This can feel deeply humiliating and confusing. You begin questioning whether the marriage ever meant anything at all. But to understand this behavior, you must first understand the psychological emptiness the narcissist is constantly trying to escape. A narcissistic person depends heavily on external validation to maintain their sense of identity. Attention, admiration, emotional reactions, these become psychological fuel. When a marriage ends, especially if control has been lost, the narcissist often experiences a profound injury to the ego. And rather than sitting alone with that pain and confronting it honestly, she quickly seeks another source of validation to cover the emotional wound. Carl Jung believed that people who refuse to confront themselves become prisoners of unconscious behavior. Instead of facing loneliness, insecurity, or inner emptiness, the narcissist distracts herself through new relationships, public displays of happiness, or carefully crafted appearances designed to communicate one message: I am still desired, I am still winning. But what many fail to realize is that speed does not equal healing. Moving on quickly is not always a sign of strength. Often it is evidence of avoidance. A person who cannot sit peacefully with themselves will constantly need others to silence the inner emptiness they fear confronting. This is why comparing your healing process to hers becomes dangerous. You may still be grieving while she appears publicly joyful and emotionally unaffected. But genuine recovery is not measured by appearances. True healing requires reflection, self-awareness, and emotional honesty, qualities the narcissistic personality often struggles to sustain for long periods. Your responsibility is not to compete with the illusion she presents to the world. Your responsibility is to rebuild your own mind, your confidence, and your inner stability without needing external approval to feel whole again. Because in the end, the person who heals slowly but truthfully becomes far stronger than the person who escapes pain by hiding inside distractions. Perhaps the most important thing to understand after divorcing a narcissistic wife is this: your healing will eventually become the very thing that disturbs her most. Not your anger, not your arguments, not your attempts to prove yourself, your peace, your independence, your emotional detachment. These are the things the narcissistic mind struggles to tolerate because they represent the loss of influence. In the beginning, many men remain psychologically trapped in the relationship long after it ends. Their thoughts revolve around the betrayal, the injustice, the manipulation, the unanswered questions. And as long as your emotional energy remains centered on her, the connection still survives internally. But something powerful begins to happen the moment you redirect that energy toward rebuilding yourself. You begin thinking more clearly, your confidence slowly returns, you reconnect with parts of yourself that were neglected during years of emotional exhaustion. The constant anxiety weakens, the need for validation fades, and perhaps for the first time in a long while, you begin experiencing inner silence instead of emotional chaos. Carl Jung believed that suffering can either destroy a person or transform them into someone more conscious. But transformation only occurs when a person stops identifying entirely with pain. Many people remain trapped because they build their identity around victimhood. They replay the story endlessly, feeding resentment until bitterness becomes their personality. The narcissist often expects this. She expects you to remain emotionally wounded, reactive, and psychologically dependent on the past. But healing changes the entire dynamic. When you stop reacting emotionally, when you stop chasing explanations, when you stop needing revenge to feel powerful, something unexpected happens. Her ability to control your inner world disappears, and for a narcissist, losing emotional control over someone is often experienced as a deeper defeat than the divorce itself. This does not mean you become cold or emotionless. It means you become conscious. You learn that peace is not something another person gives you. It is something you protect within yourself through discipline, awareness, and self-respect. And in the end, your greatest victory will never be destroying the narcissist. It will be becoming someone her chaos can no longer destroy.